Hey there, sports history fans. We've got some exciting news to share with you. 6 of our podcasts from the Sports History Network have made it to the final round of voting for the prestigious Sports Podcast Awards. Here are their shows and the categories. Historically Speaking Sports and This Day in Sports History are both competing for Best Sports Talk Podcast. No Nonsense Old School Weightlifting History is in the running for Best Fitness, Health, and Wellbeing Podcast. When Football Was Football is up for Best Sports Documentary Podcast. Wrestling with Heels On has entered the ring for Best Wrestling Podcast. And Shoulder Roll Virtual Boxing is fighting for the title for Best Combat Sports Podcast. Now, of course, we need your help to take home the championship for each of these awesome shows. All you gotta do is head over to sportshistorynetwork.com/vote. Cast your vote for your favorite shows, or better yet, all 6 of them. Again, every vote counts, and we gotta show the world how much sports history really matters. So thank you for your support and making Sports History Network the headquarters for sports yesteryear. But again, don't wait. You gotta go vote now. That's over at sportshistorynetwork.com/vote.
Hello, this is Ross Bliley from the podcast Pigskin Tales. This podcast is sponsored by Sterling Soap Company. With products sold throughout 41 locations around the globe, Sterling Soap Company has a unique assortment of products to choose from for your loved one for the holidays. Handmade artisan soaps created by Roderick and Amanda Lovin since 2012, these products are affordable and provide great value. Act now and save on your shipping costs. If you purchase $75 or more, your shipping cost is free in the United States. Shop now online at sterlingsoap.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello, sports fans. Welcome to another edition of Yesterday's Sports on the Sports History Network. Today, I am here once again with my friend Dave DiPaolo, and we have our special guest, Hall of Fame defensive tackle for the Dallas Cowboys, Mr. Bob Lilly. Been gracious enough to join us for part 3 of our podcast.
Talking about your dad, Bob, in this book here, you talked about him when you were young. You didn't realize about how tough he was. He was a strong guy. You said you went down to the garage one time. Talk about, you said he pulled an engine out of a truck where the hoist wasn't working. That's unbelievable. Talk about that for a minute.
Well, that was a pickup.
Do you remember that?
That was a pickup had a V8 engine. Ford pickup with the V8. His hoist had broken. It actually broke. It probably one of the chains had kind of come in too, or started. So anyway, he lifted it up, and the engine fell that back down, and then he saw what happened, and so anyway, he had to get it done. So I was there with him. And he said, I got to unbolt this right quick. And he said, I think I can do this. So he took the pans, let's see, flathead V8 engine. So he took the 2 flatheads off, undid the motor, bent over with his bad leg and picked the thing up and carried it over and set it down right outside the door on concrete. In some concrete. So anyway, I ran out there in a little bit, and I thought, well, I'm going to move it around. I couldn't even move it. I was like
Unbelievable.
About 7 years old. But anyway, one time we had a flat. We went fishing a lot in the morning. We'd get up about 5 o'clock, and we'd go out to some rancher, give us permission to go fishing, and we'd go out there and catch us 2 or 3 bass apiece, or 4 or 5, and then we'd go eat breakfast at the little cafe downtown. Park Market was 1,300 people. And then I'd go to school, and he'd clean the fish and take them to people he knew that liked fish, because we didn't. But we liked to fish. We just didn't like to eat them. But anyway, I mean, it's things that I've seen him do. One time he told me to get a rock, and he picked the back end of the pickup wasn't there as heavy as the front end. But anyway, he told me, get a rock. He said, put it under the sack for right here, scoot on a big rock, and you got the rock. So anyway, I had to push it under there with my leg. He picked back into the pickup up, and I put the rock under there, and we changed the tire. And I never really thought much about it until I tried to move the rock when I couldn't even move it. So anyway, he was. So I took some of my teammates out to Throckmorton a couple of times, and we hunted out there. I took them out more than that, but I was telling them my dad used to be able to break a pair of pliers, and a couple of them said, I don't think so, and so I said, well, let's stop and get a pair of pliers. So we did. And anyway, they squeezed on them all the way out there. And I said, Dad, can you still break a pair of pliers from one end, older? And he said, I don't know. And I said, well, here's a pair of pliers. See if you can. He went, boom. He just broke it right off and gave it back to me. And I said, that's $20 a piece, boys. And I'd already told him, I said, if he does it, you're going to owe him $20. Oh, they didn't mind.
Unbelievable.
Great. They thought that was great.
There were stories about you picking up a Volkswagen in college, or I can't remember exactly. I wrote a book report when I was a young kid about you. You were my favorite player.
Yeah, I got to where I could pick
you remember that?
Too. Well, I didn't have a car till I was a junior. So I worked in the oil fields, and I gave money to mom and dad because my dad got worse as he got older with his leg. And mother she was the county treasurer for a few years, but she finally took over my uncle. He had a little jewelry store, and she put in a wedding deal where you come in and see what you want in a catalog, and she'd order it and so forth for the wedding gifts and all. And so anyway, where were we? I'm thinking
about the Volkswagen.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I finally got a car. Ultimately, I was working in the office. I saved enough money. I bought this car for $150. My dad checked it out. He said, this car is in real good shape, except it's rusty on top and on the hood. 53 Plymouth. And that was, I don't know what year that was, 58 or something. No, probably 59. And I didn't date a whole lot, as you can probably figure. Anyway, took it first day. I'm going from my dorm up about near where the classes are, and I'm going to get parked. And it was near the student center. So I pull in out there, the place down there, I thought. And, back then the cars were pretty big. Sure enough, it was a little Volkswagen. And it kind of made me mad. So it didn't make me mad. It just upset me. So I got out. I said, oh, I'd already lifted the back of a Renault up. We had a fishing trip and tried one with one of my buddies, and we had a flat. I picked the back of the car up, and he put the rocks under it, and we changed the tire because he had a tire tool, but it didn't have a jack. And so, anyway, I figured I probably could, so I just picked it back in the Volkswagen up, put it on the curb up on the sidewalk, and put the front end up there and parked my car. Well, I didn't know it, but the guy that's a skiff was taking a picture of me. And they had a picture of me in the skiff, and I don't know where it went, but I don't have it anymore. And anyway, that was a story around PCU that I didn't really like. But that's how that happened.
Hey, Dave.
Yeah.
Can you hold that book up again? The one you just showed?
This one, Mark?
Yeah, I was curious to know. Mr. Lilly, do you know what happened with the cover? Because that's George Andre on the cover.
That's right. Publisher, which is in New York, I think, chose that picture. And that wasn't one of the pictures I gave the lady that wrote it. But anyway, you know what? It didn't bother me at all because George was my best friend. And we roomed together for 11 years. And, and so I thought, oh, well, my nose isn't quite that crooked yet, but it's getting there. And anyway, I sent George a book. I wrote him a letter, and I said, George, this is not, this is your picture. And I said, if you are angry or if you want to try to do something with this company, well, feel free to do it. I said, it doesn't bother me at all that your picture's on my book. I said, because you're my best friend. And he called me and he said, I feel like it's a compliment, Bob. I didn't take, no, I'm not mad at all. In fact, I'm happy to have my picture on a book. Somebody, and so anyway, we stayed friends from there.
It was forwarded by Roger Staubach. He wrote the forward, and he once said that you were the only guy he ever played with where the peers, the other guys in the room, when they watched film, were an ooh and ah over some of the plays that you would make. There's a famous clip of you jumping over a guard and tackling actually O.J. Simpson, believe it or not, for a loss. And he said that you were the only one that the players were, had that kind of reaction to and plays, which is quite a compliment coming from him,
It really was. And I'm not sure I deserved it or not, but I didn't even remember things like that. I'd see it in the game. Yeah, so I brought it up. Yeah, I could, but I mean, that was just part of football. Just I high jumped. I ran the hurdles. I ran track. I played basketball. I played racquetball through college and all the way through my pro career. And I played with both hands. I'm actually left-handed, but my teacher in the third grade changed me from left-handed to right. But she made me write like 2 hours a day after school, and that was in the third grade and all the way through. And then she made me do circles first, and then up and down, and then A's and A, B, 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 B. And so that really, I think, trained my brain to be able to use my right hand it pretty much as well. I can't throw quite as well, but I could play tennis right-handed, or I could play racquetball right-handed, but I really like racquetball because I could play with both hands. And so I became pretty good at racquetball, and I think that helped me with my quickness and also with my vision to see movement here and react to it or here, whereas it might not have been quite as good if I were left-handed only. I don't know, but I mean, that's something I've always wondered about.
Right.
And, to jump over somebody, we did that in practice all the time. So they wouldn't try to cut block, but they'd try to block us low, and then they'd just jump over them.
Right.
So that one, just.
Right.
In this book here, Bob, this was the 100 greatest players back in, I think, 1999. They wrote this book. It was put out by Sporting News. And you were the first lineman mentioned at number 10. So in other words, regardless of position, you were the best defensive lineman of all time in this book. You were a little ahead of Deacon Jones, I think. Merlin Olsen is in there, who was great.
Yeah.
And in here, though, you ranked your best players that you ever played against or you ever saw. And at number 1, you had Jim Taylor. He was talk about Jim Taylor. He was that good?
Well, he was overall, I mean, all around, as far as he wasn't, a Jim Brown as far as running the ball, but he was a Jim Brown as far as blocking for plays. He was Jim Brown as far as making short yardage plays, and he was a good runner. He wasn't as fast, but he was good, but he was always making key blocks, always protecting the quarterback, always. If they needed a first down and they had 3 yards to go, he could get you 3 yards. And that's really very important. He didn't make the 50-yard runs downfield generally. I'm sure he made some, but I just thought he was great because of his blocking for the passer. He stood back there and took on these huge linemen to block for Bart Starr. And then, then he could catch the ball. He ran good routes. He did everything well. And, I could have picked Jim Brown, or there probably were others. OJ.
You did. You had a bunch of others on the list. I think of the only current guys at the time. You had Jerry Rice in there. You had like your top 10. You had Zeno Marchetti, Roger Staubach. You mentioned those guys too, but I just didn't realize Jim Brown. When I saw it, I was like, Jim Taylor's right up there. You had him right underneath Jim Brown, and you had Sammy Baugh and Arnold Graham in there. They were in there. And
just to think, because I read all his stats, and like one year, 1 or 2 years, if you look at him, he led the league. He set a record for field goals, touchdowns, interceptions, and what else is important?
Punting.
The passing.
He was a
percentage.
He punted.
Oh, punting. Yeah, he set the record for punting all in 1 year, and he did it in one or the other all through his career.
Right.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's a different era, and but Jim Taylor and Jim Brown were a different era, and I love Jim Brown, and I love Jim Taylor was the nicest guy too. He was very nice to me. We at the Pro Bowl, the first year you're a rookie, but after that you're one of the bunch. I will never forget the first Pro Bowl I went to, and we go in at halftime during the game. Halftime, we go in the locker room. And everybody's going over to this, the old Coke boxes where they were pressed. And it had Coca-Cola was sticking, it was pressed in, but the Coca-Cola was sticking out a little bit. And I think it was white and the other was red. Anyway, that was that. And these guys were getting a drink out. And so I went over to get a drink. And all they had in there was beer. And these guys, I looked down, they're all drinking beer. I could not believe it. So I didn't do it. So that stopped after the next year. So that was just 2 years of that. I imagine it had gone on prior to that.
Wow. That's amazing. And speaking of different eras, I wonder if this isn't really so much of a question, but you might want to comment on it. And I think Dave would agree with me about this. Me and Dave both played football, but, we never made it to the level of playing in the NFL. So we became fans, and we watched a good majority of your career. And all through the 1970s, we were big fans. And I get kind of mad when some of the modern day fans try to say things like, oh, guys from that era, they wouldn't even make the team today. I think that's pretty disrespectful to try to diminish someone's accomplishments like that. And you guys, you had to work in the off season. You didn't have all the benefits that these guys have today. The arthroscopic surgery and the better knowledge of nutrition and all the benefits that these guys have today that you guys didn't have. It just kind of makes me mad when people say things like that. And, I always defend the guys that played from your era because you guys were the best as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you. And I sort of feel that way about when TV first started, when the pro football first started, I was young and I started watching it with my dad. And, they had probably no weightlifting, in high school, maybe even in college. And they had their pads and things were not anywhere near what we had. And they had leather helmets, which I had a leather helmet in 8th grade. And I'm going to tell you, I don't think I could have made it as long as I did with a leather helmet. These leather helmets that we had, they were well used. They were soft. But no, the players, I mean, there was some great players back in the old days. And I do think that, when they finally integrated and the black players came in, I mean, they added to the game. They had very special abilities. And so I think it made the game much better because everybody has their own niche,
Right.
And so I think in our era it was more we lifted weights, but we weren't trying to look like Adonis. Today they're trying to look like they're trying to get strong enough that they can pick the whole car up, And probably they can. I don't know. But anyway, I've thought about it. And I've thought, I don't know if I would have really enjoyed playing at 300 or 320 pounds. I mean, to me, I think 280 would have been my best. 270. When we got to 270, you know how we did that, right? That's how, because I fixed the scales. I lived in Throckmorton. We had a cotton gin, and we raised cotton out there, raised wheat, cattle. And so I worked at the cotton gin for a couple of summers, and the guy there said, he said, we have certain farmers here who have a tendency to bring in, they had these cotton sacks that they would fill up, and then they would bring them in, and so they would put them in a weighing, and they'd pay them for what they weighed. Then they started finding out that they're cheating a little bit. Some of them were putting rocks in them or green cotton balls, which weighed more. And so they tried to figure out how to do something. So they started fixing the scales. One of these particular ones that were doing that. But anyway, I shouldn't be saying all. But anyway, the main thing was I learned how to put there were deals that go up and down like that, but you still had to balance it. So if it was on 10 pounds, 210 pounds, it was still balanced. But there was one deal that controlled that. And I learned if you taped some money on it, you could gain. So I put 30 cents, took 30 cents. That got us 9 pounds. But we were 9 pounds. After about my fourth year, when I realized he wasn't going to let me get any bigger than 255, and I'm starting to play against a guy that weighed 275 and 280. So I took George Andrew and I said, George, let's stay after practice. We'll fix this. We'll work on it.
Yeah.
So we took the scale for him. I knew how to do it. We had to trial and error all the way from a nickel up to 30 cents. And a nickel, 2 nickels, 3 nickels, 4 nickels, and I finally put a quarter in a nickel, and that got us right at 9 pounds. And I figured we couldn't get by with any more than that, so we started out with actually about four nickels, and then we moved up to 30 cents, but we could balance the scale. In other words, but it was weighing it had already given us 9 pounds. So George Andrew, who was 6'6", and they made him play at 255, is now at almost 265, which is still light. Then I was playing at 260, and then that made me about 260, 268 or 9.
Right.
Anyway,
You guys had waistlines, like these guys today, no waistline. Even like Ed Jones, as big as he was, when you saw Ed Jones on a football field, he had a waistline. He looked, but these guys today, and they're great players. Some of them, they really are, but they could go so fast in this direction and that direction, but that's it. They don't chase plays down from behind like guys like Randy White did. These guys, they don't have the motor that those great players have, but it's not the same. I watch a lot of football because I play that fantasy football, so I watch all the games. I watch players from teams that they don't normally even show on television. But it's not the same. It's not even close to really even being the same.
Well,
you know,
the thing is that they want to score. They want to, they want to make it a show. The TV people and these players today are real big. But what you notice a lot is that it's almost in the line like a wrestling match. I mean,
yes,
and they call holding occasionally, but if you really watch it like I do, I mean, they've always got some grab somebody somewhere, and it's very difficult for them to get by. And generally the people making the sacks are the defensive ends or the linebackers or somebody that's can get through there while somebody's holding somebody else.
That's right.
Football's still a great game. Don't get me wrong. I love it. And I think the players are, the running backs and all are still great, and quarterbacks. And I think the linemen are great, except they have gotten so large that,
like sumo wrestling.
Well, I don't know. It's like if we were to play these guys, they could just shove us around, probably. You know what I mean? And so I
don't know about that.
Well, I don't know. It depends on what they could.
What do you remember? What do you remember about that 5-0 game against Detroit in the playoffs? Do you have any memories of that game? 5-0, you beat them. It was a safety and a field goal. I think Mel Renfro made a big interception towards the end, but Greg Landry was the quarterback.
They could have beat us. Yeah, that was in Dallas. That was the Cotton Bowl. And that was just a real hard-fought game. They had a good team, but, I mean, we did too. We both had pretty good teams. And it was a defensive game. And so, it was – we really had some great defensive players that people probably didn't realize, like Chuck Howley, who got in the Hall of Fame after his he's got dementia real bad, and we had the Mel Renfros, which were really all stars. We had Cornell Greens, who basketball players that were actually great. They learned to be really good, and George Andrews, and had Jethro. Jethro was a very good football player. And Larry Cole came. Larry Cole was a very good football player. We had good ones, Leroy and Chuck. Chuck was outstanding. And, it's just, they had a good football team too, and we knew it. And we were scared. We weren't scared. We were leery right down to that interception Mel made. In fact, that was probably the most important one interception that he ever made playing with the Cowboys. Otherwise, they could have caught it, and they would have been home free.
You had a stretch of games there on defense. I believe it was 6 games, 24 quarters. You only allowed 1 touchdown that season. That defense of 1970. It was going towards the end of the year and into the playoffs. 1 touchdown in 6 games. I think San Francisco ended up scoring a touchdown on you the week after the Detroit game. But other than that, that was it. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. I knew that we were holding people. Coach Landry had a goal for us, but, we don't allow but 17 points max. And our goal is 13. And so I'm thinking somebody's got to block some extra points or something. But anyway, no, it was defense. Coach Landry was right there. He was coaching us. He coached us, and our coaches were very good. Ernie was good. Jerry Tubbs was good. All of them really very astute. They knew his.
How about in this book, Bill Walsh comments and calls you the third greatest player he ever saw. He put Joe Montana, Jim Brown, and Bob Lilly. He puts you ahead of his own player, Jerry Rice, even. What kind of? I mean, when you hear stuff like that, I mean, what do you think? That's tremendous. It's unbelievable, really.
I'm glad I didn't ever eat.
He's,
I didn't never
he's
get
in
to
that
live there.
bookie.
No,
Oh, listen, he mentions it.
I just did the best I could. I mean, I gave it all I had, and I guess God gave me the ability to do certain things, and that was probably one of the few. No, I love football. I
When you
loved it from the very time my dad got me in football my second year, a little bitty football, and we tossed it around, and he really kind of put it in my brain that that's what my destiny, and it turned out it probably was on this earth.
we Mark and I went down to that. We went to that Chuck Howley induction. Mark and I drove out to the Hall of Fame, and we saw you there when you came downtown for that picture. There was a large picture with all the Hall of Famers. We saw you coming in. I think their golf carts were driving you guys in. And I said, "There's Bob Lilly." And you actually spun around because you were surprised somebody recognized you, I think. I said to Mark, "There goes Bob Lilly." I says, but we had a good time that weekend. I felt badly about Chuck Howley. I thought it was a sin that it took that long to get into the Hall of Fame. The guy was a tremendous player. He was like a 5-sport letterman in West Virginia. He should have been in a long time ago. And today you hear guys talk, players, they're not humble at all. They're talking about they're going to get in the Hall of Fame. They're not even done playing yet. It's unbelievable. But here's a guy, the man was 40-something years in the waiting. I think it's a disgrace, actually.
Well, Chuck made more big plays probably than anybody on our team. And Chuck never, he was very quiet, and he was a 5-letterman in Virginia, West Virginia. And he did track. I remember I was running with him, and he ran. He came in the same year I did with the Cowboys. He came a week early, so we had 3 weeks of 2 days. So he came in as a rookie, although he'd been drafted by the Bears in '58. He got his knee hurt. They sent him back to Wheeling. We brought him back the next year. His knee was still hurt. They sent him back. He bought a little store, gas station, and I think he was fixing tires. I just remember this from what he told me. And he started making hamburgers and doing things like that. And then he played in the West Virginia University spring game, and he must have had an outstanding game. Gil Brandt got word of it, and they signed him. But when Chuck was in track, he was very fast. Chuck was in wrestling. He was in diving, in gymnastics, and I can't remember what the other one was. But anyway, 5 of them. And he lettered, and he won some of them in the deal. But Chuck, I think the first 40 they ever timed him in, he ran a 4.6, and that was with football shoes, and that was with the self-timer who got timing like that. and so he could run with almost any receiver back then. I mean, he couldn't run with Bob Hayes. That was about the only one I saw him. So he was, and then he's 6'3", 230 pounds, very muscular, very strong, very agile, and very, very, very nice person. And so I actually did the introduction, and his son received it. And his son, his son and I both pulled the shroud off his bust at the Hall of Fame.
Yep.
And I was very proud to do it. And the family asked me if I would, and I was happy to. But Chuck and I were good friends. We were neighbors for quite a while. And anyway, there's probably quite a few players that do slip through the cracks that are very important, but they don't ever get notoriety. And Chuck was the kind of guy that never talked much. He would never toot his own horn. He would never, he would just show up for practice, say hello to everybody, go out there, go through it as hard as he could, go back. he started dry cleaners about halfway through his season with the Cowboys. I took the pictures of all his customers, everybody that came over for the grand opening. I took all the pictures. I had a dark room in my attic, made 8x10s. Chuck and I both signed them. And anyway, it was, here he was entrepreneurial. And guess what? He did that. And then he got into the, I guess it was I don't know whether it's, what do you call the people who kill bugs? Exterminators, yeah. And anyway, some company out of Wichita Falls.
He was a real hustler.
Yeah, he did well, real well. And I'm so happy and glad that he was a good man, a very good man. And he got in the Hall of Fame. It was thrilling for me because he deserved it.
Well, I think that's one of the big differences between you guys back then. We're very humble and didn't show off and didn't brag. And a lot of today's players, I won't say all of them, but they score a touchdown or they make a tackle and they doing a dance and pumping their fist and it's just, to me, it's not very sportsmanlike. You guys were much more sportsmanlike and humble. And
last weekend, Mark, Colorado was playing. They were down 16 points. Deion Sanders' team. The guys were jumping around like they were winning the game. You're losing by 16, pal. You know what I mean? But I watched that game. I was commenting on it. My buddies came over to watch football on Sundays. Did you see the Colorado game? It was a disgrace. Bob, let me ask you about one more book. A fella named Eisenberg wrote this book called Cotton Bowl Days.
Well,
and
I've never read that, but I didn't even know it was available.
He actually came to your house and he interviewed you. He said he was driving out to west of wherever he was leaving from. He was going to go see the greatest cowboy of all. And he commented about your house and he talked about the big picture with the defense on the wall. I think it was a black and white, very muddy game. You talked to me about that picture once. You said you wanted to get some copies made for your teammates, in fact.
Yeah.
And you told them about it. Yeah, we were talking to you there. That's Mark and I. That was at a card show.
On the door.
yeah.
Yeah, that was me and Mark.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Talking to Bob Lilly. That's me.
That's you. I got one just like it.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, there it is. Yeah. There it is.
Yeah.
Okay, now I can talk.
Now we're talking.
Oh, West Texas.
Yeah.
You were telling this author about a reoccurring dream that you would have about you were on the sidelines, but you had gray hair, and Coach Landry would tell you to get into the game, and you'd say, "No, these guys will kill me." And he says, "No, they won't." And you would run out, and then you'd wake up. How many times did you have that dream?
Oh, I had that dream for probably 2 or 3 years after I quit. I mean, I didn't have it every night. I had it very often. And I mean, here I am. I'm sitting on the bim, and he says, "We got to have you. You got to have you. Get in." And I'm thinking, I can't do it, Coach. I just hurt the team. I'll get killed.
Let me tell you, your tribute to the speech you made at his at the funeral that you made. I recorded that live when it happened because I had a big satellite dish. I was able to pull that in. That was a very nice tribute you gave to Coach Landry. You talked about how he wrote on the blackboard, God, family, and then football. And you were a younger guy. You didn't understand it, you said. And then later on, you figured it out. And, that was a great thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. He did that every year, everybody that ever played under him. And he did it. And anyway, that meant a lot to all the players, really. I've got that jacket. I ought to grab it. I can grab it real fast, and I'll put it on. So you see, it's the 100th anniversary all-time team. If you want to see it.
We'd love to see it.
Yeah, go grab it.
We'd love to see it.
Mark, look.
Tremendous.
The 100th. Look. That's Sporting News book was only about the 75th all-time team. Now it's 100.
Yeah. And he made the team, of course.
Sure, of course he did. He was old. He was two-time, Mark, all decade. He was all decades.
Yeah.
Tell me how you want me.
All
I like it.
Look at that.
I like it.
All right.
Look at that.
Yeah.
100 anniversary.
Now, now see,
You were, yeah. You were so, yeah, that's unbelievable.
All right.
okay.
Beautiful.
Now that's a pretty jacket, isn't it? Guess what?
That's a beautiful.
Somebody's got a factory. First of all, it's got Bob Lilly. Oh, yeah. It says collection of Michael Strahan.
Whoa.
Straight
No, he's making clothes.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
How about
And
that?
he's got a line of very nice clothes. This is really special.
Yeah. That's a beautiful jacket.
Good backdrop. Yeah. Anyway.
You said one time that you didn't have a lot of football stuff around the house. You had just that picture and at the time, just the 75th trophy for the 75th all-time team. That's it. You said you only had two things at one point. You told us that once.
Yeah, I don't have, I mean, it's like, I've got lots of pictures, but I keep this one. Keep that one up there to keep me guessing.
Oh, I got that one.
Okay. That one always, every time I come in here, I look at it and I say, I wonder if I got it. One time, Jim Brown and I were at you got it. We were at a memorabilia show and we were together. We were back there signing together. And so we're signing this same picture and I'm signing over here and he's signing over here. And I said, Jim, do you remember if I got you or not? And he said, no. He said, you probably did. He said, you're the only person that I would say probably when you got your hand on me, I went down. But he said, I said, well, I have my doubts if I got you or not. I said, I had my hand on you several times and I didn't get you down. Anyway.
That's something I observed in all the films. If you watch all the films, Dave, of Bob Lilly, you notice once he gets his hands on the ball carrier, that's it. It's over. The guy's not getting away.
Well, even the offensive guards and tech, once he got his hands on those linemen, he could just dispose of them. You know, he was so quick. You were so fast, and you probably had natural strength. And your father was that strong, then you inherited a lot of that. And you like Dan Reeves said, he didn't need to pick up weights. He didn't have big Popeye muscles, but he could play, and he played tough. You know, he played soft, but he never hurt. But he just got to play, made all the plays. Charlie Waters even said it. He just made the plays, all the plays.
Well, from the time I was sixth grader till I got actually out of, well, I was still in college, I was throwing hay up into the loft.
There you go.
And I actually, when I learned to drive the tractor, I had my dad, I mowed. That's all I could do because I might tear something up if I did anything else. But anyway, my first couple of years I mowed, and then he got me a windrow, and I could windrow and do 50 acres a day. But that's when I learned that I could lift things. It was the windrower. The windrower is 17 feet long because the swath, and it looks like a combine. It's got a blade that turns like this and brushes the hay or into the cutters. And then it's got a deal of, it's a I don't know what you call a belt, but it's about this wide, and it runs it back and it comes out in a row, like, so your baler can pick it up. So anyway, I was in a rocky field and I did not have the jack. The jack was on there. You all you had to do was just turn it down and tighten it up. And so anyway, I'd let it slip and didn't notice it or something. And so it hit a rock and broke it off. So I didn't want to tell my dad because I didn't know what he did. But anyway, so I thought, this reminded me of our car deal at the fishing lake, at the little pond. And I was about a when I picked up the Renault, I was a sophomore that year anyway. So I went over and I got me some rocks and put down there, and then I picked it up. I could lift it, and I put the rocks in there with one leg, and then I'd back up, and then it would be a little too high, so I'd have to take a rock. I'd have to pick it up and kick a rock out. And anyway, we finally found the right rock, and so that's the way I did until I finally got the nerve to tell Dad that when I put it back up, I wired it on so it looked like it was permanent.
Right.
Anyway, things like that. I mean, but to throwing those bales up in the loft is about 8 to 10 feet that you throw them, maybe 3 of them. Some. And so I had to do it because I was by myself. So I had this flatbed trailer. I would pull it behind the tractor and I'd put it in granny gear, which means it only goes. And I would get out and throw hay on there until it wasn't stacked or anything. And I'd turn the key off. I would stop the tractor. It wasn't going very fast. So I would get the hay all neat, and then I would turn it back on and get it going straight, throw hay on there again, turn it off. Then I'd drive over to the barn, and some of them stacked it downstairs, and some of them had a stairway, and it was about as high as I could reach. And I would have to pick it up and throw the bale up there. And then I'd go up there and put them in order. And so I think that for doing that I did that through that then, and even in Pendleton, Oregon, my granddad's brother had a hay farm. I never dreamed I'd be hauling hay again. Even when football season started, one of my teammates, Dad had a little hay farm right along a little creek in Oregon.
Right.
And so he gave me $5 a day to come out there and help Lad haul hay on Saturday. So every Saturday after a game on Friday, we were out there throwing hay. And I'm thinking, that probably, because my torso was strong and my arms were strong, but I didn't ever lift hundreds of pounds of weight. But
So Troy Aikman talked about farm work.
yeah.
His father had a farm in Oklahoma there, and he said, I thought that was going to be a deterrent for. He said, I always wanted to play pro sports, and when we moved so far out of town, I figured that was the end of my sports career. He goes, but in essence, it actually turned out to be a blessing. He said because he worked hard, his father would make him work till 1, 2 in the morning. He would have to get up at 6 in the morning. He said, and the work was hard work. He said, and it turned out to be the exact opposite of what he thought it was going to be.
Yeah, he's right. I mean, we worked. Mother never counted on us for dinner until 8 in the summer, because we would get through and wash up and come in, and generally get there about 8 or something. So 5:30 in the morning, knock. Dad and I we dressed, had work clothes, went down to Skeet's Cafe, had breakfast, went out. He took me out to where I was going to be working, and then he went over. He had a bulldozer he was running, and that's what we did. And
that's amazing.
Just the way it was. And football was kind of everybody else dreaded football. Not everybody, but a lot of them were farm boys, but a lot of them didn't like the 2-a-days and all that. To me, it was escape from throwing hay up in the barn.
That was easier than baling hay, right?
Yeah, it was.
I think your wife is probably wondering if we're ever going to let you go. So
No, we'll let him go. Let me ask him one more thing about this card. Do you remember taking that card? Do you remember taking that, your first rookie card? Do you remember taking that picture or no?
Well, I think was our first jerseys. I mean, we had white on there, so I'm sure Loghead Photography took that picture, I bet. And I've got some somewhere. I've got one or two of them around, but I don't know where they are. Probably in those boxes. I've got lots of boxes.
Yeah, my buddy sent a card to you. He comes over. He's a local guy. He's just getting it. He's trying to get all the Hall of Famers from the 60s and 70s. And he said, your autograph is one of the best. You know, it's a lot of guys just scribble. He says, yours is very, very good. He says, make sure you tell him that. He says, because I don't collect cards. I have your rookie card, but I got that when I was young. Somehow I just started getting, but it got crazy, all the card collecting and, all these guys bringing cards to have guys sign. Instead of bringing one card, they're bringing 10 cards. And, the other guys would get disgusted. So I could see how I got turned off by it and I stopped collecting them, but I still had that one there. And,
I give
it's a
my
big
third grade teacher credit for my writing, and whenever I sign a card, I sign it the best I can. And when I sign my name, I usually sign it as neatly as I can. But I would have never been able to do that with my left hand or without the teacher that kept me after class the whole year.
Right.
Mark, that's funny because I'm left-handed. They I guess from the time he was young to the time I got they'd let it go. I guess they didn't see nobody forced me to do it the other way.
Right. Well, we want to thank you for taking the time with us. It was more than gracious of you.
Yeah, I could speak for Mark. I know it's even at 65 years old, it's still a big thrill for me to to speak with you. It was. You were my all-time favorite. My buddy laughs about it to this day, playing football in the yard and everything. He says, I got sacked by Bob Lilly a lot. He says, thank you. We still joke about
That's
it.
quite a compliment. Thank you very much. You all have been very nice. No. I'm glad that this one is working right, better.
Oh, yeah.
It was great.
It's been,
fun. You have a one.
Fun because you're pricking my memory. Some of these things I forget occasionally and have to be reminded.
Yeah, Mark said, they have so much patience. They tried to work it out the first time. I said, no, his wife is charming. I said, people would just gave up.
Yeah, she is a wonderful lady, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
very nice wife. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Extremely nice.
Well,
thanks for coming on.
Wonderful. And
this concludes our 3-part podcast with Bob Lilly. Dave and I can't thank Bob enough for taking time out of his schedule to talk with 2 old Cowboys fans. We also want to thank Bob's wife, Ann, for her patience in coordinating this whole event, and our fearless leader, Arnie Chapman, for all he did to make this podcast a reality. Let's go Lions! And as always, thank you to our listeners. We hope you enjoyed it. God bless.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com. Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you got to do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.